scare actor is a performer, right? Who I think just doesn't fit into the colloquial interpretation of what a performer is. Straight up.
My name is Jeffrey Dolenar, and I'm a scare actor and a stilt walker.
They're fucking badasses. A scare actor is a badass.
Thrill of the scare. It's something that has always made me want to get into it and never stop. I don't know, it's almost something primal.
I'm Lennon, and I'm a scare actor. A haunt can be anything from something you set up outside your front yard to a fantastic recreation of horror films that you love and that you know, with these interpretations from performers that are really like visceral, and it's kind of like being in the film. And it can be just like in a cornfield with a chainsaw. I mean, it can be so many different things, and I think that I've always hated the term haunted house. I feel like it really cheapens the activity.
I've done just about everything one can do. I started in a maze, and I started going to the scare zones, and I started going into like, chainsaws and still.
Your typical areas that you're gonna get at an average haunt, and this is becoming more of a formula as we move forward. You're gonna have some mazes, right? So what a maze is it's basically a freestanding structure somewhere within the event. It could be the entire event, but for the most part, there are several. And the maze is all set to look like a certain thing that's supposed to be super scary, and a position in a haunt can be in there. That is an experience you can have. Another one that's super common and becoming more popular, which I'm very excited about, is just open, like free range haunters, right? Not to make us sound like cattle, but more freedom and ability to move within a space. The first haunt I ever worked was put on by a high school, held at an old steel mill, right? Which got actually pretty scary. I feel like the building was really haunted. Conversation for another time.
Last year was my 11th year scaring at Universal Studios Hollywood for their Halloween Horror Nights event.
I have been haunting for 15 years.
People who are really good scare actors almost have to have like an undeclared minor in psychology, because they can kind of read what's happening in that person's body language, and then, okay, well, all right, this is what I can do that'll get the best reaction out of this person. And for me, scare acting is that.
I'd say that being a scare actor is one of the most physical jobs that anyone could ever have. I say one of, because I know there's lots of physical jobs, but it's definitely the most physical job I've ever had.
I think physicality really makes all the difference, because that can be a dude in a mask. Not everyone can give life to that mask.
So it's 2013, okay? And I am standing over this blood-soaked dummy with a gaping mouth that has a hole that is just big enough for me to slide a chainsaw into to make it look like I'm sawing somebody's face in half. It was a long night that night. There are some moments that you have in scare acting where you're on set and you're 6 hours deep and you're covered in sweat, you're crying. You might be even losing your mind. I've had those moments too, where you're just like, why the fuck am I doing this? Like, why do I do this to my body? Why do I do this to my mind? Why do I do this for people who don't care? So there I am, covered in blood, and these guys walk through and they start chanting as they all kneel, "Hail to the Queen! Hail to the Queen!" And I cried. I was so happy I cried, and I think that was a good moment for me to have, because it was early enough in my haunt career that I could have not done haunts again. And it just happened in a moment that, like, oh shit, I needed that. I needed to hear, like, hail to the fucking Queen, Is there a hierarchy between mazes and scare zones? Yeah, there is, actually. I think that I think that people can get really caught up in what we're doing here.
The stilts will hang out with the stilts because they understand each other, or the chainsaws will, because they understand each other. So it does end up being cliquey. But the coolest part of especially like street performing is that you can shift that a bit, take away the clicks in a sense as well, because you're bonded. You're like, oh wow, there's the chainsaws. I never talked to them, but you have this amazing moment with the chainsaw, and it's just like, we did that, dude. Good job. It's like, wow.
In the most basic way, it's almost like war, right? It's like actors' war, which also sounds silly, but it's true. There's a lot of bonding, I feel like, that happens through that experience. And in Los Angeles, people can get a little bit caught up. I definitely worked an event where chainsaw was probably the best, biggest, baddest shit that you could be doing at the haunt. And I was doing chainsaw. And within the community itself, it felt so great. Like, I loved it so much. And I really felt like I'm not a lot of women on chainsaw, unfortunately, but I made a lot of like just lifelong friends that I consider brothers, like some of the most amazing people. But when you take a step back from it and you recognize that these people who I still love and who are still my brothers, but might maybe be treating other people a little bit differently because of, like, where are you stationed, like, where are you at? A maze? Like, what are you talking about? I worked mazes for so long. I was in one spot. So I'm definitely in no position to feel like I'm better than anybody else. But it happens.
One of the aspects in regard to consideration of, should I do it this year? It's like, do I really want to deal with more drunk guests trying to hit me or throw beer on me or touch my butt?
Absolutely unacceptable. I mean, we're talking anywhere from getting casually groped to being headbutt to being thrown on the ground to being lifted up by a man 3 times my size. And, HR would have an absolute fucking shit fit if this were happening at a real office with, like, business people. What do you call them? 9 to 5 people, Imagine that just like happens at a Starbucks between employees and guests. No.
There's dehumanization that happens, and especially just people who walk into like a theme park or like a haunt experience in general. They tend to check their brain at the gate, and they are on this, okay, I'm just here to drink, or I'm just here to hang out, I'm just here to do stuff, and they stop connecting with reality in a sense, and which is great to like get into, the surroundings. It's a really cool experience to live that in depth with. But from like the scare actor perspective, it does cause a little bit of an issue sometimes, because then if it's too real, then there's that whole, oh well, I'm too real, and now I'm this character, and now they get to the point where they need to punch me, or feel like they need to protect themselves.
When something intense and aggressive happens with guests, I would really like to sit here and tell you that I'm the brush it off and move on kind of person, but I've definitely, the immediate response I think for me is get out of my space. So whatever that entails for the person, depending on their size, depending on like what they look like, depending on what they're doing, the first step is always just to get them out of my space. And depending on the gravity of what has happened, I'm a retaliator from time to time. I try not to be, because I know for the most part everybody means really well, but as a scare actor, you definitely know the difference between intent and reaction, which I think is probably one of the most fundamental aspects of being a scare actor. There's a lot that you're gonna have to accept physically that you would never be asked to accept anywhere else in another job, or someone would get fucking fired. So casual harassment, groping, hitting, headbutt, even the headbutt. I mean, these things, they happen. It's part of the disaster, and if it's intentional and it's real bad, I've been known to knock a few ankles, as you're walking away or trip you up. I try not to, though. Oh my gosh, no, people won't hire me. I don't do that. I'm so nice to them.
So it's almost this like filtering of like, well, even though they assaulted me, it's not the worst I've been assaulted here, and it's almost like too little of a scenario to make a big deal out of, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's which is crazy, because that shouldn't even, I don't go into the supermarket and try to punch somebody and think nothing's gonna happen. So it's that aspect too.
I would like to sit here and tell you that the higher the production value of a typical event, that the more beefy the management and security is going to be, and that you're going to be protected and you're going to be believed in these instances and taken care of as a performer. But in my experience, that's just not the case. I tend to appreciate the way that like low budget, more as you would call like amateur indie haunts handle situations like this comparatively to bigger budgets. I feel like when you have a massive cast, a lot of things can kind of slip to the wayside and not become as important or imperative. And straight up, I'm not even gonna lie, like we've all seen it. Everyone who's been a scare actor, you see those people, other scare actors, who just take it to the umpth degree. Like the smallest thing that can happen is all of a sudden this big deal. So management in larger companies and larger events, I feel like, have less room to work with. So it's not always managed the way that you would hope if you were gonna get headbutt at work,
So for the haunt that I typically go to, that was actually my first haunting experience, and I just happened to do it 11 years. I've been very lucky to have found a situation that works for me in regard to like employment and people I like to be around and all that. With that, this specific haunt does do things a little different than some other places do, like because they're more IP related. So they bring the character, essentially. Like they'll give you, okay, you're gonna be a skeleton this season, and then you kind of and like the theme of the area you're in, and then the rest is essentially up to you.
My experience in the haunt world is a lot of the event providing whatever character I'm supposed to be, and then building from that. I've definitely been in situations where I've created my own character, which is also really fun. I think because I, look like this, that you can kind of plug me into a lot of final girl moments, which happens to me a lot in haunts, is I'm the damsel in distress, I'm the final girl. It's really fun for me actually when I get to have a weapon and I get to be the person behind this scare, because I feel like I can get kind of pigeonholed in that, As far as horror films are concerned, I think that the final girl is one of the most empowering roles. I feel very empowered when I watch horror films as a person and as a woman in particular. Haunts, however, I don't feel as empowered in those roles in haunts, because haunts don't have the through line to the heroism that we want to see from our final girl. So I can say that a lot of the female participation in haunts can be set up as really misogynistic, and as a woman of this size, that you can not only maintain the stamina to go as long as everybody else can, because no shit, but that you can also, I don't know, carry an extra 12-pound chainsaw while you do it, or wear Kevlar while you do it. I have extra hurdles to jump through for sure because of how I look and how people perceive me initially, but nothing I can't handle, nothing I haven't handled.
Other places you do character development, you create your own character, you kind of maybe get a theme to base it off of, but then it's all you, and you have to build your own character, build your own costume, do your own makeup, do your own like character development, especially if it's like a speaking character or something like that. And like I said, the place that I scare at the most they have like a no talking rule as well. So I don't necessarily have to worry about what is my character going to say, what is my character going to sound like and talk about. It's more just pure adrenaline, pure feeling, pure scare. It's not just on your phone, it's in front of you. And that makes it creepy, that makes it real, that makes it much more organic, because all of a sudden it's like, oh.
As a scare actor, you really have to let go of a lot of the things that make typical performances like really stand out. So like, how well are you playing emotionally? Like, do you know your character? Like, yeah, I know my character, but nobody gives a shit where she comes from. No one cares that she was a nurse. It's cool if you get to work an event where you get to share that and kind of explore that with guests, but the backstory and things like that are what motivate me in my performance, not necessarily what I share with people. And my character is built from elements that scare me. Needles, addiction, World War II, and hospitals. I'm pretty scared of hospitals too. People die there, it's a whole thing. She was a nurse in World War II who lost her mind. Having to treat men during war, I think is, as a woman, just like one of those things that sounds really scary. So she lost her mind treating these men because, as you know, in war, especially World War II, you're not always treating men that are gonna come out of it. You're treating men who are technically already dead, but you just kind of have to ease them into the end of their life. So I thought, what would that do to the mind of a woman, especially in like, you know, given the context of the 40s? What does that do to someone's mind to see all of these men who are putting their life on the line for you, that you can't save any of them? It doesn't matter how hard you try. All you can do is be there with them while they die. So yeah, she was born from what I imagine the insanity of having to sit with people you love that are fighting for you in this moment.
I wanted last year to be my last year out of 11 years. One of the things that I really wanted to do and still want to do is train someone who can take the torch from me and do all the things that I've been doing and keep going, because my body's dying and I can't really do that anymore to the extreme that I did 11 years ago. So that would be the legacy, just passing the torch on and just inspire others to do the same amount of effort and carry that on.
There's really nothing like getting paid to scare the shit out of people, you know?
Thank you, Jeff. That's a wrap.
No, thank you guys. Honestly, this was a really fun experience. I love talking shop about scare acting.
Yeah, same. I love it. Hey, you should stick around for the next interview. We're going to see if we can talk to the nurse.
Wait, you're bringing the nurse outside of haunt season?
So, we were wondering if you could introduce us to the nurse.
No?
Yeah, I thought it would be good.
I don't think that's a good idea.
Okay. Sure.
Wait. Jeff, what's the issue here?
Good luck.
So, we were hoping to talk to you about, your what your experience has been like working at a Halloween haunt attraction.
something in the tone of a saxophone that makes me do a little wiggle on my